Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership Heart Podcast. And today I am thrilled to have my friend Andy back on here. He runs an organization and the founder of an organization called Dovetail Solutions. And I am I'm happy to have him back. So he was on episode, I want to say it was 112. Gosh, this was probably 2020. I'm not even sure. And so it's been a while. And he was also in that Art of Caring Leadership book. And he really there was like a huge light bulb moment for me in that interview, and so now I have him back on here. I'm on a part of his advisory board, so just kind of a caveat for that, but also to just be talking about his evolution as a leader, his organization's evolution in the industry. And so I'm excited to have you back on here,
I'm
Andy.
so thrilled to
Welcome.
be here, Heather. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm thrilled by your success and what you have to teach and what I have to learn all the time. So always honored to be in your presence. Thanks so much.
So I'm thinking back when we first met. Oh my gosh! So you remember the bow tie? I mean, it was like
I
I'll
remember
never
that.
forget that. I just remember
That's
the
right.
bow tie guy. He was always a bow tie guy. We met. I think it was a nonprofit event, or we were both there. Just I think it was a fundraising event.
Yep.
And I just remember the bow tie. I guess it's gosh, that was a long time ago. I don't even remember when it was because it's so
It
long.
was a while ago for sure. Yeah. No bow tie today. No bow tie today.
We were both like less great, like younger, like all the things
Yeah.
with less kids.
Right. 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 Things didn't hurt as much when you fell. Now they do.
Oh
Now they hurt
my
more now.
goodness. Isn't that so true? Like my kids will be like, "Oh, let's do this." I'm like, "Yeah, no, if I fall, I am really afraid something
Yeah,
might
that's
break.
right.
So
That's right.
I
I'm
am
I'm
not
the
going to
same
go
way.
that far."
Same way. That's exactly right. That's what happens when you
Uh,
age, I guess.
I guess so. So, okay, tell
Yeah.
everybody where you are right now in your leadership journey, and we'll do a little bit of look back too about like where you were and like where you've gone, but just where you're at.
Sure.
Where do you feel like you're right now in your leadership journey?
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me, Heather. I'm privileged to be here. I really think leadership is so interesting on so many different levels, and it has so many intricacies. But leadership comes, in my opinion, and it's always come from listening more than talking, and then acting on what you hear more than what you say. And they always say that God gave us two ears and one mouth, and there's a reason for that. And I think there's a lot to be said for just the availability to people and with people that you lead is important. Maybe even if you're not subjecting them to some kind of action of some kind and asking them to follow through on something or asking them to correct something or leading them in some way proactively, even if you're listening in amongst them. I think it's really important. I think it's important to be present. We talk a lot about at our firm about being present and being there, and not only physically but mentally as well. So I don't know if you've ever been in an experience. I'm sure you have. I have, where people are talking to you and they kind of look over your shoulder at the next person behind you or who else is in the room that they could talk to, and you can tell right away you really don't have their attention. So there's a lot to be said for listening intently, listening carefully. I'm a big fan of it, and I really believe that leadership has a lot to do with that. Now there are times when leaders have to step in and provide corrective action and provide some a road to success, or this is our journey for the next year, this is our campaign plan for the next 18 months, those kind of things. But overall, I think leadership has a lot to do with just being sincere, being quiet, being willing to learn. Also, there's a lot to learn from those around as well, and I think that's an important part of our process.
Tell everybody now where a little bit about like the organization that you founded, kind of what you do, and even just where you are today with that compared to even just looking back to 2020.
Yeah, it's last time we talked about this was in 2020 when, in the pandemic, things were different. We were working remotely. Our business is full communication strategy. So everything from public relations to branding to marketing to digital strategy, creative strategy, those kinds of things, telling your story. I consider us storytellers, really. And our company's, going to be 20 years old here in the next day, and it's a remarkable achievement for all of us involved, and particularly those that really have worked diligently to look at the future all the time. We can get mired sometimes in looking down and ensuring we're doing what we need to do right in the moment. But those visionaries that are amongst us were those that were looking up ahead and to watch how the firm was going to operate in the next 5 years. And so from 2020 to 2025, we've evolved tremendously. We have expanded our services in California. We have obviously been all over Colorado for a long time. We have clients all over the country, Heather. We have Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Florida, Tennessee. There's a lot going on all over the country, Texas. And so, when we looked at what we wanted to form in 2005, I had one employee when I first by myself, and then I had one employee who started with me, and she was a visionary. She really understood what I wanted to do. She complemented it so well, and she was additive to it. She suggested so much, and so what that's done over the last 20 years for us is, as we've added people, I've really looked for additions as opposed to subtractions in people, what they can provide, what they're willing to go through and talk about, to make us bigger and healthier and happier, and also a more well-balanced organization. So that's what we've become. In my opinion, we've become a healthy, strong, 2-decade-old organization that really is relied upon for a lot of different things. Everything from full scale, campaign plans, like how do you build a campaign that's going to sell a product or a service, to, gosh, what do we do when we're in this crisis? We're in a significant crisis, and we have things at stake that are very worrisome to us and are going to be worrisome to our company. How do we fix that? To even now, we're involved in public affairs and public policy and changing public policy, or helping to change public policy so it's more advantageous for those with whom we work and live. So there's a whole mixture of work, that a body of work that we've done that we're very proud of, and it's all because, and I say this tongue in cheek too, but I hire people smarter than me, which I say is a low bar. The tongue in cheek it's a low bar. So, but people have, when they come in and they're able to provide that expertise and just sheer knowledge, just by life experience as well. We hire people that have experience in this business, but those that are really interested in going that much further for our client partners. We call them client partners, not just clients. We really consider our relationships a partnership, not a vendor client relationship, but more of a partnership between us. So that's how we've evolved, and we've done it. We've survived the '08 recession. We survived the COVID
Mhm.
shutdown, and now we're here in 2025, and in a strange economy, I'll say too. I mean, we're this is a very strange economy right now, and there's a lot of things happening that we didn't expect, and more to come in that regard. And so we have to be flexible and malleable. And some of that is just by watching and listening and understanding trends too, which I can always learn every day about that.
What role and impact do you think that AI will kind of play in forming out your strategy over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yep. Great question. And AI has become an advent of really considerable impact in our business. Um, as you know, Heather, I'm a speechwriter by trade, so I like to write speeches for public figures, and also private. But I'm a writer, and when somebody says to Chat GPT, write me a speech on how to introduce Heather Younger as she delivers a keynote, AI can look that up, and they can produce a speech in 30 seconds or less, kind of thing. The problem with AI is that it doesn't have a human approach to it. Sometimes the facts are inaccurate, and also it can write it in a voice that doesn't make any sense about who Heather Younger is. So if I was going to introduce you for a keynote address, I don't think I would rely on AI. Now, that being said, I have 3 children, all of whom have used AI for papers at their high school, and they've at least begun the process by using AI. It's a tool to be used. It's a tool to be utilized, and it has a lot of effective strategy. In our business, though, where it really lacks is that sort of stylistic human approach. And as I said, I write for a lot of people, and I wrote a speech about 2 weeks ago for a banker in New York, so a CEO of a bank in New York, and I wrote it for him. And then he said, "Why don't you tell me what it looks like on Chat GPT on AI?" So I printed off for him and I sent it to him, and he said, "I understand. I understand that my staff cannot go and write a speech based on AI anymore. That it's going to be has to have that human approach." Like, for example, I know that he likes to open with a pretty dry joke or a sense of humor. And there's no way I can tell AI, hey, start off with a dry joke that would meet his criteria. I know how he likes to speak. I know how he likes to deliver messages. And also at the end of his speech, he always delivers an anecdote. He likes anecdotal information at the end of his speech. That also I can't put into AI. So it's those kinds of things that make the difference between writing something that can be produced by the computer generated program, and what a human can do, and what I can do to write in his style and what he likes. High profile CEO, he speaks nationally, he's on TV all the time. And it's really important that we get it right for him. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot there.
No, that is so true. I've learned to use AI quite a bit for my thought partner. It has been a tremendous thought partner to the extent that um Like if I know that I go sniff test it to my human friends. So it's like I
Yep.
go there as the kind of the beginning point, but it's not the end all be all. And then I
Yep.
go to my human friends and say, okay, like what does this feel like to you? Does this feel close? Does it feel spot on? And then we just start tweak. And that's what I find is that it really works well as a starting point, but not the ending point.
Exactly
So
right. I mean, it from an infrastructure standpoint, from a skeletal version of what you want, it's brilliant. It's really
mhm.
well done. And I worried initially in my industry about how AI is going to impact our client base. Are they going to forgo us just to go to AI? And what I found is they haven't. We haven't lost a client to AI, and I hope I don't ever. But AI can be a good skeletal tool to build something from a foundation. You're right, and that's a very smart way to use it.
So when we look back on that episode that we had, like I said, in 2020, and there was one thing that I feel like I'll never forget it, and I always attribute it to you if I'm talking on from stage or wherever it is, and it's that the concept of speaking last, and when we are at a table trying to create, really safety, trying to get, like you were saying earlier, the people who are super smart around us feeling comfortable with opening up their mouths and presenting a counter view to what we say. Have you had
Yep.
any, has that like in the, has that either backfired in the last 5 years? Changed the view? Has it expanded? I'm curious to know where you are with that concept.
Yeah. I'm so impressed you remember that because it's something that I have tacked up on my wall. It says speak last. And I think yes, it has had its negative impact as well. For example, if I'm in an all team meeting for my company and I'm going to speak last, and I hear somebody that says something that I really don't want to have happen, but they want to express their view, I think about it as I'm processing it in my mind. I think that's something that I wouldn't necessarily suggest, and I think it's the right tool. But would she or he have said it if I had started the conversation and sort of framed out what I wanted? That person would have never said that because it directly opposes what my interest is in the conversation. And as a business owner, I think it's important to hear everybody's views. So I worry a lot and often about those that won't speak because they think it's contrarian or they think it's pushback that I wouldn't want. And so I try to give as much expansive opportunity for those that don't have an agreeing view, or that necessarily wouldn't say something because I've already put out the framework. And I don't even like to do that. So when I'm running meetings and I say, what do you think about this? I'd like to hear views. People speak up and I think they feel free to do so. And without any predication on me saying, nah, that's not really what I wanted, or that's not really the direction I want to go. Let's let it all out on the table. And we can say yes or no to things as a team. And sometimes, yes, Heather, sometimes I have to say, you know what, it's going to go this way, and I'm sorry, but that at the end of the day, everybody has the chance to speak. I tell people oftentimes, in this business, that feelings are never wrong. If somebody feels nervous or they feel anxious about going on stage or they feel sad about something that's happened to them, uh, it all is fair game. It's all part of the process. So I lost a dear friend recently to cancer,
Mm,
and he died at 64. He was one of my closest friends, and I
mm,
struggled a lot with his death. And I worried about when I was thinking about, and I was asked to eulogize him about a week and a half ago, and I was one of several folks that eulogized him, and I asked to speak last. And I did so because I wanted to hear what others had to say about him, and I wanted to make sure that, first of all, I wasn't saying anything out of school, but I also became deeply personal in my eulogy because I counted on him a lot for some personal strength as well as some professional strength, and he was always there. And as he was getting ready to pass away, I held his hand, and he looked up at me and said, "I love you." And he's never said that to me before. And he's a kind of a tight-lipped, conservative, white male kind of machismo kind of guy. Um, and as he was dying, he felt that weakness. He felt that weakness in him, and he knew
mm,
he was going on. And he said, "I love you." And I thought, if I had said anything to him prior to that, he wouldn't have said that to me. And I remember that, I'll never forget
mm.
that piece. And me speaking last, me having the opportunity for him to say that, or for others to say things that they wouldn't have said otherwise, that's a gift. That's a gift that I cannot and won't ever not accept. I mean,
Mm.
it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, it really is that sense of holding space for nonverbal, like first nonverbals. Like first, it's just like I'm here with you. I'm
Yep.
centered on on like being present with your presence, like being here to be across from you to like receive what you need to give me, whether I want it or not. And
Yep.
then, like in this example, what, thank you, number one. Well, sorry for the loss. That's number one. And number
Thank
two,
you.
thank you for sharing that vulnerable experience, because that had to be rough, and I'm sure it still is, kind of tugs at you a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that the speak last portion of it still lived or like rang true even in that exchange. And I think in your work, if everybody in your team has that perspective, so if you're modeling it, which is huge when we talk about leadership, it's like, what behaviors are we modeling? Are we
Yep.
perfect at it every single time? Absolutely not. But if you're like, one of your main North Stars or values is that you are going to speak last, and that your desire to seek to the truth of another person is there, it's going to make you way more effective in the role that you play, and like
Way
being
more
like the
effective.
crisis manager, the
Yep.
communicator of the speeches, like all the things you're saying. If you just are sitting back and always seeking the truth of another, you're just going to be a much more effective communicator. And like, that is your differentiator as the founding member of the firm, right? And then just the firm overarchingly, if they're modeling that, that's, I would venture to guess that that is unique amongst those other agencies, is what I'm saying. So of
Yeah.
course they're going to be communicators, but that speaking last and sitting back and holding space and seeking the truth of another, I believe so strongly in this area. But I do think that this is a differentiator that yeah, I would say I'm glad that we're bringing this to the top some more, because
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
critical. It really is.
I,
I always
I
tell, when I'm speaking to audiences like leaders, I'll say, like, you don't realize how much you holding space for people, or like letting them be safe, or listening really without going to get, but going to give. You don't realize how much it differentiates you. And so I think for Andy, that is a differentiator for you, as the founder of Dovetail.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because you and I, as you mentioned, you're a board member of my firm, and I am so grateful to you for so much. But I listen to you, and people lean in and listen when experts speak on matters that which we're or, having holding space for, and also trying to solve something or trying to get some counsel on. I think it's so important when you speak in board meetings, for example, it's fascinating to me because it's always the truth. It's always well founded in experience and theory and fact. And also, you're very dear to me. So just as his friend. So I think that there's a lot there that I can learn from you if I'm just quiet about it. And at the end of the day, I think what it does, it makes for a richer conversation. It also holds value for the person speaking. So I don't know if you feel that way, but I think people feel
Hmm.
more valued when they're heard.
Yes.
And my children, for example, when I have an 18-year-old who just graduated from high school, and when he is trying to convince me that he should stay out a little later at night for a curfew, I listen to him first. He says, "Well, what time do I have to be home?" And I said, "Well, what time do you think you should be home?" So we talk about that, and
Mm.
it's a conversation about I think I can stay out till midnight, and I say, "Okay, well, tell me about that. Why and what's going on?" And without me even answering, he's come to his own conclusion that he can stay out till midnight, and
Mm.
and that sort of feeling, it gives him power, gives him authority, but it also holds him responsible for what he decided on his own. And I was just an advocate for him. Now, if he said, "I want to stay out all night and I'll see you at 6 a.m.," we'd have a different story as a parent. But that doesn't happen when you have people that you trust, and when you also have people that feel like they're valued. They'll respect their position and their role in everything.
You bring up a good point, that it's in those quiet times when we're not speaking that people can come up with their own solutions, which is where like true empowerment comes from. It's not us
That's
telling
right.
them what to do or always like even giving them path forward, but as we sit in silence, listening and letting them talk, often they'll be like, "Huh, that I don't know how rational that is," and they talk themselves out of the irrational things that were happening, or like
That's
whatever we
right.
were presented with. I always talk about that cycle of active listening, and when I talk about decoding, it really is like, okay, and this is the area where I'm the weakest, but it's like pause, and sometimes the pause is like 2 days, 2 weeks, and whatever it is, to
Sure.
research, to validate, to get what you need. And in that moment, have found it. Just I didn't know this in the beginning when I created this, but I have found that over time, organizations, the leaders, the team members, they come up with their own end game, and now they're like, "Thank you for like facilitating my own decision making," like versus
Yeah.
you telling me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't you think they feel more empowered if they've come to their own decision? They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I need to execute my own decision." And it's interesting because I've been accused of that. I've been accused of just sitting in the room and listening, and they come to their own conclusion. I'm like, "You're welcome." But you're exactly right. And and sometimes it might not be exactly from a business perspective, it might not be exactly what I would have said or what I would have thought,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought, why don't you, and when I'm in a creative business, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in, I'm not selling widgets. I'm not an accountant. I don't have to worry about dollar signs and where the decimal point is. I more have to worry about, are we getting the story and message across? Are we doing it in such a way that makes sense? And every once in a while, I'll put my 2 cents in and I'll say, I would think about this a little differently. And here's what I would say. And I never say, please do it this way, or I try not to say it that way. I really am more about, what about if we did this? Or this seems to be going this way. What about turning this way? And just giving them another option. But, working around people you trust, thinking about that and parenting children you trust is a world of difference from their
Mm-hmm.
perspective and from yours. And also, yeah, as you said, they've arrived at their own conclusion and they'll do it themselves and they'll believe in it because they thought, I came up with this.
Absolutely. Actually, this makes me think of yes, was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was last night. But I think it may have been. I was watching a kind of like a documentary for Johnson Johnson, and it was talking about this. It was talking about, remember that thing? I don't remember if it was in the 80s. This is bad, but the Tylenol scare. And
Oh
remember
yeah,
where it
it
was
was the
like,
80s.
remember the cyanide and all that?
Oh
Remember?
yeah,
And then I was thinking about, they were talking about the response and how they came back with like basically emptying the shelves and offering to pay for the shipment back, even on a bottle of two that was $2.50, whatever it was. And as I was watching, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about Dovetail because I was like, thinking about who it was that advised Johnson Johnson back then to not blame, not not to kind of like minimize their role, but
yep,
just be like, oh, 100% ownership. And even though it wasn't their initial fault, to say, oh well, I'm taking this on, and we're going to do this thing, and we're going to do it right, and it ended up paying a dividend because the trust factor for the
that's right,
organization was there.
that's
And
right.
it was something that just like popped into my head just now. But when I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, I should talk to Andy about this because I think it's
Yep.
a great case study, and I'd be curious to know, like, have there been any, without like obviously messing up with confidences? Have there ever been times where maybe there are all those things where you have to just tell, is it hard for you always to advise an organization where they might have to make a decision that's a tough one, and you just say, you know what, we're not blaming. Let's 100% own it. Like, how much do you feel like you would give that advice more than where it's like, well, I'm not sure. Like, I'm just kind of curious, where you come out on that.
Yeah, we're involved in a pretty high profile crisis right now with a nonprofit, and there was fraud involved by their CEO. And one of the things we talked about right away when they hired us is, one, should we fire or suspend the CEO? And then two, how do we communicate that? And I said, well, the reality is that you have to own it. It's your CEO. This is the board chairman who hired me, and he said, I don't really want to admit anything right now. And I said, the reality is, if you don't, we're gonna have problems down the road because they're going to say, well, you knew about it then, but you didn't say anything, or you knew that fraud was happening, but you suspended her as opposed to terminated her. Why that? So it's always better
Mhm.
in situations, and I advise clients 100% of the time. I don't think there's a time when I said, don't do that.
Mm,
But I always believe in owning up to it and saying, yep, we made a mistake, and people make mistakes. We're a people business and people make mistakes. But it's funny, Heather, I worked for President Clinton, and continue to serve President Clinton now. And I don't think you'd mind me telling you that we went through an evolution with him where there were times when he wouldn't admit anything and he would just flat out lie
mm,
about it. And then we came to a conclusion long after his presidency was over about, this is how we have to face things now. And so as things come up and as different situations come up, whether it be a
mhm,
server issue when his wife's running for president, or whether it be something involved in the Clinton Foundation where we made a mistake, those are all really serious, things. And as you as a leader think about, I made the mistake, or my company made the mistake, or my organization made the mistake, and I own it. That's where things really get very quiet very fast and calm down quickly, because
mhm.
I've yet to meet a human being who hasn't made a mistake. I've yet to find a company who hasn't screwed up somewhere, and so including my own. And so I'm really sensitive about that, and I think it's important. And I think nine times out of ten you're going to find, human beings are forgiving, and they're willing to say, you know what, I appreciate the truth and honesty, and I appreciate you correcting it. Please don't let it happen again. And so our clientele know that. And sometimes, Heather, as a result, they don't hire us. Sometimes they go to another firm and they say, I want to go to another firm that's going to protect me more. And the reality is, we'll protect them better if they're willing to
Yeah.
just speak the truth.
Yep. Speak the truth, ask for the truth, seek the truth. And I think that there's just no way around. Yeah, like your life is going to be more fruitful. The business will be more fruitful. Your relationships
Yep,
will be more fruitful from a business perspective or personal. Doesn't matter if you are in that space. So
that's
I
right.
appreciate that for sure. So what so what's next for you now? You're at the 20-year mark, and you're like, okay, what's next for you? What's next for Dovetail? And what do
Yeah,
what do you think your long-term impact might be? Like your goal for your long-term impact might be for your leadership legacy and the organizational legacy going forward.
yeah. Thank you for asking. We have started our succession planning for um, the president of our company, Emily, to buy the firm, and so we're in the process right now of just beginning that process. It's going to be a 10-year process. I'm going to be 53 next week, and so I'd like to be done and have her own it by the time I'm 62. That's a goal of mine, and really come back with her as the CEO and owner, and come back as an advisor to her, and perhaps some consulting work with her, but. Um, I'd really like to go on. I'd like to teach. I'd like to write a book. And I've tried a couple of times to write a book, and I found I don't have the time to do it well, and I really want to do it well. And I have a lot to say, and I want to write about it. Not only
Mhm.
about what's happened in my life, but also, I'm battling the so what factor right now. Like, who would ever want to read about that kind of stuff? But it's compelling, and it's compelling enough that I want to actually provide some anecdotal stuff that I've learned too in the book, and things that I've witnessed and learned from. But those kind of, I was a college professor for a while while I started the
Mhm.
company. I want to go back to that at some point. But for the next decade or so, I'm gonna work hard to make sure we're doing more work with those that we trust and those with whom we want to do business, and also those that really want to do it the right way. We're seeking that. We have a foundation attached to our company as well, so helping those. We happen to focus on kids and kids literacy and kids education in our nonprofit, and so we give money, and we also do a lot of work inside the classroom with professionals, with executives around the community that want to come in and commit time to help kids read and help kids finish math homework, and it's important as we help that process too. So giving back is really important to me. It will be for the rest of my life, and doing whatever I can to make sure that people are heard, the marginalized are heard. We're doing a lot of work in homeless issues right now in Denver, and there's a lot happening right there with those that don't have a voice. What about their needs? What about their wants and desires? What about those that feel like they don't have it? And ironically, in the communications business, I really want to make sure people that want to communicate do so, and that's our goal for the long term. And so I'm really happy where we are. I'm thanks to you and the other board members, I'm getting steady counsel on things and how to do this well. I was not a business major in college, Heather, so I took one business class in college and I got a C, and I even got a C after I had a tutor as well. So that tells you what my success rate is in business. But gosh darn, we've been here 20 years, and we've fought the odds. I talked to a college professor of mine the other day who taught me in college. He said, I would have never thought you would have run a company for 20 years. That would be the last thing I think. He's right. I was a political science major. He thought I was going to be a U.S. senator, is what he told me. So,
Oh, wow.
that's where things have ended up.
I just counsel them. That's all. That's all. I just counsel them and presidents. That's all I do.
I'd rather be the guy behind the scenes than the person up front. And as an elected official back in 2000, I was up front, and I didn't like it. So I learned
Mm,
quickly that's not where I want to be. I like behind the scenes. I like structuring policy, and I like writing, and I like formulation. So it's fun for me. So love it
mm.
very much, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, I'm just was thrilled to be able to bring you back on here, Andy, and highlight again the great work you're doing,
Thank you.
just the kind of human that you are, and just I want people to leave with just understanding the importance of holding space for other people, for speaking the last, for being vulnerable, and being admitting that you make mistakes. That those are the things that build trust. So when we think of caring leadership, when we're thinking about this next iteration of what leadership is, it has a lot to do with where we are with our relationships, and this is a really big one. So. Thank you for coming back on here and just
Thank
sharing
you.
a little bit more about yourself with everybody else too.
You bet. I'm so humbled that you had me on. And I'm so grateful to you. I just think you're amazing. So thank you again so much, and it's an honor for sure.
Thanks. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast.
Thank you.
Be well.
Be well.